I can still remember the exact smell of that ballroom. White roses and champagne, with a faint trace of disinfectant drifting from the restroom door, just behind my chair. My name is Olivia Carter, and that night, at my own brother's wedding, I was seated by the restroom. Literally, a step away from where the staff kept refilling toilet paper. I smiled, of course. I always do. Years of business taught me that silence can humiliate louder than anger. But as the bridesmaids laughed near the head table and my brother toasted family unity, I could feel the irony tightening like silk around my throat. Family unity, while I sat next to a door-marked restroom. Employees only. The tablecloth brushed against my legs, smooth as the satin blouse I'd chosen for the night. Emerald green, perfectly pressed, worth more than the entire catering setup. Yet, none of that mattered. Because to them, I was still Olivia, the one who never quite made it. The one who tries too hard. My phone buzzed on the table, a message from my assistant. Contract renewal, urgent. My finger hovered over the screen. I should have waited until Monday. But something about that moment, the laughter, the pitying glances, the smell of bleach, made me pause. I looked up at the chandelier, then back at my reflection in the champagne glass. Fine, I whispered, my pulse steady. Let's rewrite the seating chart. I wasn't always this composed. A few years ago, I was just a trembling girl trying to convince her family that dreams could be built from nothing. Back then, I lived in a cramped studio in Austin, Texas, my desk pressed against a window that looked out onto a flickering streetlight. I was 23, fresh out of college, armed with a business plan no one believed in. My brother, Ryan, was the family's golden child, the one who made smart choices. He went into finance. I wanted to start an ethical design company that gave women artisans fair pay. Cute idea, he'd said once at dinner, sipping his beer. But maybe try something realistic before you start saving the world. Even Mom chuckled softly. He's not wrong, honey. Maybe find something stable first. I remember smiling, swallowing the sting like a mouthful of glass. My hands shook as I folded my napkin, pretending not to care. Inside, something shattered, a quiet kind of heartbreak that comes when people you love look right through your potential. That night, I sat in my tiny apartment, surrounded by fabric swatches and unpaid bills. I called my grandmother, Evelyn, the only person who ever listened without judgment. Her voice was gentle, but firm. Liv, she said, you can't bloom in soil that mocks your roots. Go plant yourself somewhere that believes in rain. Before hanging up, she told me she was mailing me something. A little luck. A few days later, I received her old silver bracelet engraved with 3 words, Know Your Worth. I wore it every day after that. The next family gathering, I didn't argue, didn't defend my dream. I just smiled, hugged them goodbye, and drove off in my rusted Corolla with a single suitcase, a laptop, and $600 to my name. As the city lights disappeared behind me, I felt the weight of disappointment, theirs and mine, pressing down on my chest. But under that pressure, something fierce started to take shape. I wasn't running away anymore. I was running toward something, a version of myself they hadn't met yet. And one day, I promised they would. The first year nearly broke me. I rented a tiny co-working space above a bakery in Dallas, where the smell of cinnamon rolls mixed with a hum of overworked printers. My company, Evelyn Designs, had no employees, just me, my laptop, and a stubborn belief that beautiful things could also be ethical. I spent nights sketching patterns and sending cold emails to boutiques that never replied. I lived on ramen and instant coffee, stretching every dollar like elastic. Some nights, I cried into my keyboard, wondering if Ryan was right. But every morning, I'd slip on my grandmother's silver bracelet and whisper, Know Your Worth. Those words carried me through exhaustion, rejection, and the endless buzz of uncertainty. My first break came unexpectedly. A woman named Clara Monroe, a respected interior designer in New York, stumbled across my handmade fabric samples online. She called me herself, her voice brisk but curious. You made these? Yes, I said, trying to sound confident. Then get on a plane, Olivia. I think you and I can make something special. That meeting changed everything. Clara became my mentor. Tough, brilliant, and refreshingly direct. She taught me how to negotiate, how to protect my designs, how to charge what my work was worth. Under her guidance, Evelyn evolved from a passion project into a growing design house. Still, I kept quiet about my success. My family rarely asked, and I rarely told. When Mom called, she'd ask if I was still doing that little fabric thing. I'd smile, say yes, and change the subject.
It was easier that way.
By the third year, my designs appeared in boutique hotels across Miami, Seattle, and San Francisco. Investors started noticing. One day, a venture group offered me a partnership, one that could scale Evelyn internationally. I negotiated carefully, making sure every artisan we worked with would remain paid and protected. I didn't post about it. I didn't tell Ryan. I just kept building quietly, signing contracts in rooms filled with people who underestimated me until they didn't. The small victories began stacking up. My first six-figure deal, my first office lease with a skyline view, my first morning walking into a room full of employees who believed in me. I remember looking out that office window one night, city lights glittering like 1,000 tiny affirmations. My bracelet caught the reflection, silver against the glass. I thought of Grandma Evelyn, of the laughter that once stung like salt, and smiled. They didn't need to know.
Not yet.
Some things are better unveiled at the perfect moment, and mine was coming sooner than anyone expected. Back at my brother's wedding, the lights dimmed as the band started their next song. Ryan and his new wife floated across the dance floor, the picture of elegance, while I sat next to the restroom door, the faint smell of sanitizer swirling through the air. I hadn't expected much from the evening. Just polite smiles, a toast, a quick exit. But as I watched him twirl his bride under the chandeliers, a sense of clarity began to bloom. Across the room, my mother waved at me, mouthing something like, "Isn't it beautiful?" I nodded, forcing a smile. I'd grown good at that, pretending to be small enough to make everyone comfortable. My phone buzzed again. A message from my assistant. "Olivia, urgent. They want to cut wages on the artisan's contract. Need your call before signing." The client was one of our biggest corporate partners, worth $25 million. I stared at the message for a long moment, my reflection faint on the screen. They were proposing cuts that would hurt hundreds of women who depended on us. I'd been negotiating for months, trying to reason with them. But now, as I sat by the restroom door, as waiters passed me by with trays of champagne meant for others, I knew exactly what to do. I opened the email thread, my fingers steady, typed one line. "Evelyn Designs hereby terminates the contract effective immediately. We do not compromise integrity for profit." And hit send. A strange calm settled over me, like exhaling a secret I'd held too long. A moment later, Ryan approached my table, glass of champagne in hand, his new wife on his arm. "Liv, you're sitting here," he said, glancing toward the restroom. "I thought they put you near Mom." "No," I said simply, smiling. "Here's perfect." He laughed awkwardly. "Still running that design thing?" The old condescension in his voice was almost comforting, a familiar relic from another life. "Yes," I replied, sipping my drink. "Actually, we just made a rather significant decision tonight." Mom appeared beside him, curious. "Oh, what kind of decision?" I leaned back slightly, crossing one leg over the other. "I ended a contract. $25 million. It didn't align with our ethics."
The air changed.
Their smiles froze, part disbelief, part confusion. Ryan frowned.
"Wait.
What kind of contract are we talking about?" "I run Evelyn Designs," I said quietly. "We partner with artisans and luxury hotels across the country. I started it about 6 years ago."
Silence.
Even the music seemed to fade. Mom blinked. "Evelyn? The one on the cover of Architect and Design Weekly last month." "That's the one," I said. "We're expanding to Europe next spring." They just stared, my mother's lips slightly parted, Ryan's jaw tightening as if the air had turned too heavy to swallow. Around us, Laughter and clinking glasses filled the room, but for once, the noise didn't drown me out.
It amplified me.
I reached up and touched my grandmother's bracelet, still gleaming under the chandelier light. "Grandma always told me to know my worth," I said softly. Took me a while, but I finally learned. Their eyes followed my every movement, every word. For the first time in years, I wasn't invisible. I was undeniable. For the rest of the evening, no one quite knew how to act around me. The same relatives who'd once patted my arm with pity were suddenly standing straighter, smiling too wide, their voices sugar-sweet with surprise. My mother kept stealing glances at me as if I might vanish, or worse, confirm that every judgment they'd made about me was wrong. After dinner, I stepped outside onto the terrace. The night air was crisp, humming with laughter from inside. My bracelet caught the moonlight as I traced its edges with my thumb. "Know your worth." Ryan joined me after a few minutes, his tie loosened, expression uneasy. "Liv, listen." I didn't mean to sound. I turned to him, calm but unflinching. "You didn't sound like anything, Ryan. You sounded exactly like you always have." He exhaled, staring out at the city skyline beyond the vineyard. "I guess I just never realized how big this was for you." "No," I said softly. "You never cared to ask." He winced. "That's fair." I looked back through the glass doors, watching our mother fuss over the cake table, pretending to be busy. "You all made me believe my dreams were something to outgrow," I said. "And I almost did." He nodded slowly. "So, what now?" I took a breath. The power between us had shifted, but I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity.
"Here's what's next," I said.
You learn to respect people even when their dreams don't look like yours. You stop laughing at people for trying. And you make space at the table for the ones you underestimate, not by the restroom, but beside you. He swallowed hard. "Okay." I smiled faintly. "And Mom?" "She'll listen," he said. "Eventually." Later that week, I sent my mother a package, no letter, no explanation. Inside was a portfolio of Evelyn's work, hotels, partnerships, news features. On top of it, I placed a handwritten note. "You raised a daughter who believed in beauty. I just found a different way to build it." She called a few days later, voice trembling, not quite apologizing but close enough.
"I saw what you've done, Liv.
I didn't know." "I know," I said gently. "Now you do." There was a pause. Then, quietly, "I'm proud of you." I smiled, even though she couldn't see it. That's all I ever wanted. I hung up and turned back to the window of my penthouse office, where the city lights flickered like old memories reborn. Respect. Boundaries.
Peace.
Those were my new contracts, and I intended to honor them. Months later, the wedding felt like a distant echo, one that no longer stung. My company had grown even larger, our European expansion in full motion. But success wasn't the point anymore.
Peace was.
Ryan called often now, sometimes for advice, sometimes just to talk. I could hear sincerity in his voice, the same man, but softened, humbled. One afternoon, he told me he'd started mentoring young entrepreneurs at a local nonprofit. "You were right," he said. "People just need someone to believe in them." Mom changed too. She started sending me clippings of interior design articles, leaving little notes like, "Reminds me of your work." Every message carried a quiet apology wrapped in pride. We didn't need to relive the past. We just needed to rewrite how we moved forward. One Sunday, I visited Grandma Evelyn's grave, a gentle breeze rustling through the oak trees above. I knelt beside her stone, brushing away a few fallen leaves. "I did it, Grandma," I whispered. "They see me now, but more importantly, I see myself." The silver bracelet glinted against my wrist, warm in the sunlight. It had survived every failure, every rejection, every victory. It was more than jewelry. It was the map of who I became. As I stood to leave, my phone buzzed with another message, a potential investor, another expansion opportunity. I smiled, then locked the screen. Not everything needed my immediate attention anymore. Some things could wait. Back home, I poured a glass of wine and opened the balcony doors, letting the city air fill the room. Below, traffic shimmered like rivers of light. I thought about that wedding night, about the seat by the restroom, about how I'd once mistaken humiliation for defeat.
But now it made sense.
That seat wasn't a punishment, it was the spark. Because sometimes, the place they think hides you only positions you for the perfect entrance. I looked out over the skyline, bracelet catching the last streak of sunset, and smiled to myself. They once let me be.